See. All right, recording has started. Okay. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully this is going to be a quick meeting. It looks like we've got it all squared away. And so I would like to call this meeting to order at 9:03 a.m. on Friday, March 15th, 2024. Hello, everybody. First, I think we'll on the agenda, public comments. Any public comments? Hearing none. Let's move on to the consent agenda. And I think there are two items on the consent agenda. Brian, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just real quickly, we've got our meeting minutes from the January meeting. We've got a CPACE project extension for a Branford project, and then two report outs. The quarterly financial report that I sent a week or so ago that we include in the packet as well. And then a quarterly report from Inclusive Prosperity Capital. So we've got resolutions 1 and 2 for the consent agenda.
Do we have any questions or observations from board members? Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
A motion. Second.
Do we hear? Got a second? Oh, good. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? All right. Moving on to item number 2, or 3, no 4. The
We're going quickly.
This is good. This is good. So we're going to talk about get financing program updates and recommendations, and I think Mackie's going to start us off. Mackie Dykes.
To Elise to go through the project, but want to flag for everyone, we're going to try out using a new set of slides to present CPACE projects. The template we have been using is back from the very early days of CPACE, and we just felt it was a lot of redundant information. So we'll go through the new format, and then at the end, just show you the old one and sort of what we took out. But we think this is better, more streamlined, and yeah, we'll get your feedback to see if we're missing anything that you want to see in here. But I'll turn it over to Elise to go through the project with the new slides.
Great. Thanks, Mackie. So this is a project at 126 Hyde Road in Farmington. This is a property owned by Emmett and Associates. They're an aerospace company. It's an industrial property type. And Facility Solutions Group is going to be installing 176 kW ground-mounted solar system here. We'll go to the next slide. And then this just gives you a quick summary of the transaction. So these are kind of those key points that Mackie mentioned. We want to make sure we flag for you all. So the first column here, the benefit assessment amount, almost $700,000. So looking for a 20-year loan term at 5.75 interest rate. And then we've got the financial metrics here in the middle. So the property is valued at about $1.8 million. And then I'm not sure if we've got Priyank on. He was the underwriter on this project. Priyank, I don't know if you're there, if you want to chime in at all. Oh, great.
Hey, yep. Hey, this is Priyank Bhakta. Thanks, Elise. As Elise mentioned, we actually ordered a new appraisal for this property, and the property value did increase. And despite that, there is a slight exception to the lien to value. Our credit parameters are typically within 35%. However, this project is around 36.9% lien to value. The reason why we're comfortable with extending this credit is a few things. One is we are getting the operating company as a co-borrower. The operating company has been in this specific location since 2004. They've also made significant improvements to the property. Most recently, excuse me, a $132,000 in HVAC system repairs and replacements, and then parking lot repavement. And then just this past January, they actually spent around $325,000 to repair the roof. So the property owner and the operating company, which is the tenant, they're owned by the same individual. So we felt comfortable given that track record of making this lien to value exception here. And as Elise pointed out, the DSCR is strong. This DSCR is based off of the operating company's DSCR. And however, if you look at just the entity that owns the property, the DSCR is still above our credit guidelines, so we're good there. And then moving forward to the mortgage lender section, the mortgage lender on this is New Valley Bank and Trust, and we've been in active discussions with the lender to make sure that they're on board with the proposed structure that we have. So far, they have not indicated to us that this would be an issue of, taking the co-borrower or putting on the CPACE assessment. They're actually, in fact, pretty excited about having solar on this property. And then moving forward, just very quickly, SIR is pretty healthy at 1.9. I will flag, though, that this is just the preliminary SIR. We're waiting for the final SIR, which we should be receiving any day now, but we don't see any major changes to it. And then lastly, we're also waiting for environmental clearance from our consultant. Again, we reviewed diligence documents that the bank provided to us, and they did have some remediation work that was done several years ago, and there wasn't any ongoing monitoring or anything like that we saw. So we don't see any concerns there, but we did make that a condition to funding. So making sure that environmental clearance is received will be a condition to funding as well. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Elise.
Okay, thanks, Priyank. Yep, so as Priyank mentioned, this SIR is preliminary. This is actually a conditional approval upon this property receiving an NRES award. So you see the incentive there is the NRES, which is pending. They went into the February 24 auction, the lottery. So we're expecting those to be announced sometime early May. So this will be pending. That your approval will be conditional upon receiving that NRES award. And then you can see the savings numbers here. So the total savings over the effective useful life, the EUL, over $2 million, which equates to about $113,000 on an annual basis. All right, and then the next slide here. So those are the two new slides. And then we wanted to show you the old versions. I know it hasn't been that long since January that you've seen them, but this is actually the January transaction that you approved. So you can see all of this information we've condensed from 5 slides into 2, the 2 you just saw. There was a lot of redundant information, like Mackie said. So we tried to streamline everything and really point out the key points that would be expected for you all to be heard during the meeting. The 2 things I want to point out, the last 2 slides here, there's a lot of information on those. A lot of it is kind of redundant between those two charts, but you also have both of those charts in the memo that you receive ahead of the board meeting. So if there's any additional information that you think is important for us to share, as Mackie said, let us know. We're looking for feedback, but we hope the new slides did the trick. And I think that's it. Back to you, Chair Reed.
Thank you. Any questions, observations, feelings about the new slide format?
Hi, this is John Harity. I really like the new format. It's just clear and concise and highlights what we need to know. I think I'd have to look more closely at the old format to see if there's anything else in there, but it just seems to me that it's just what we need to know, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
This is Bettina.
This is Adrienne.
Oh.
Go
Sorry.
ahead,
Do we
Adrian.
want to go Bettina first and then Adrian?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. I just want to echo John's comments. I like it too. I do personally, I like knowing like the age of the building, when it was built, and but you said that's going to still be on the, it'll be in a separate place, but not in the summary section, right?
Yeah, we could easily add that though. That's a really easy metric we can add to that overview slide. Certainly, no problem.
Thanks.
Adrian?
Oh, just to echo John's agreement, I loved it. When I saw it, I cheered all by myself.
You said cheered, not tiered, right?
Lonnie?
Okay.
It's
Okay.
Matt.
Who's this?
I like
Oh,
it
Matt,
too,
go ahead.
although like John, I want to go back and look and just see if there's any little pieces of information to pull forward, but these have become pretty routine, thanks to the team there. So if I have any other comments, I'll send them. But one thing I would like to see, and I know this may be only my pet peeve, I really think we should show the repayment schedule and how it's sculpted for all of these. I continue to be really concerned that these are not cash flow positive in the out years. I think it's a little bit of a time bomb we're leaving for ourselves and for the other people. I know we've talked about it and we're offering to sculpt for people. I'm just not sure that's enough. You know, when you get these companies years later, people who made these decisions will be gone, and the people who will be balancing the budget are not really going to care that they cashed out a bunch of money in years 1 through 5. And I think it's going to end up being a black eye for the program at that time. So I just think it would be a good reminder to us to have that repayment schedule to see, exactly what those end years are going to look like when we're looking at these deals. So I would like that one more chart.
I would echo Matt on that. I think that's an excellent point. Thank you, Matt.
I'll just jump in quickly to add my endorsement of what Matt just proposed. I think it'd just be another interesting point to be able to look at. And then also, to the extent possible, if there's any way that we can understand any, like the NRES assumption or condition is there, if there's any federal tax credits or any other incentives that are going into the whole project mix. I mean, I know that's not necessarily always possible, but it just might help us. But I generally support the idea of condensing the information, so appreciate the effort on that.
Great. Thank you all for the feedback. I took a bunch of notes, so appreciate that.
Any more?
Lonnie? Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is John
Who's
Arity.
that? John.
Just to say, I believe this is the aerospace manufacturer, and it's just exciting to see solar going on manufacturing facilities, because we've got a lot of them, and if they really scream about the cost of energy. So this is it's terrific if we can help them be more competitive and at the same time cut down on carbon. It's great.
Yeah, we do a lot with CPACE, we do a lot of manufacturing facilities, which is exactly like you said, John, there's lots of energy. It's very energy intensive, as you can imagine. So I think it's about 25% of the projects we do fall in the industrial manufacturing category. So certainly pairs really well with the long-term nature of CPACE financing.
Lots of energy
Anybody
use.
else?
They tend to have one-story, flat, big buildings. It's perfect.
Yep.
Catherine Duncan?
Yeah, hi, Terry. Thank you. I work on a CPACE team with Elise. And Elise, can I ask you just to go back to the 5 slides that we used to do?
Yeah.
I just had a question listening to the feedback. I wondered if the cash flow schedule that folks are thinking, or that Matt specifically was thinking about, if that actually showed up on these slides, or if that wasn't something, the information he was garnering from the memo.
That's always been in the memo, Catherine. You're right. I'm advocating now that we've simplified the slides to pull it forward.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. So, okay. Just wanted to make sure we were really clear about that, because I wasn't. We want to do a new slide with completely different information, but that's simple to do.
Well,
As Elise said.
from the memo, just, you don't have
Yeah,
to create a
sure.
new one, just pull it forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Anybody else? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve resolution 3?
Bettina, so moved.
Thank you, Bettina. Do I hear a second?
Second, John Harity.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, great.
Okay, and then the last item from us is the CPACE program guidelines for resilience. We'll call it in our January meeting, we brought the sort of draft form to you for not approval, but just to make sure everyone was comfortable with the direction we were taking prior to put it out for public comment. That public comment period is now done. So we're bringing the guidelines back for formal approval. And then actually, as we've engaged in the process and been thinking this through, we found another change that we think is a pretty substantive one and one that's necessary. So we want to present these for approval, but then talk through that change, and then immediately, if everyone's on board, flip them back out for public approval. But we'll have at least the guidelines in place for projects that we don't think it's worth holding up projects that might want to move forward now, which we have a sense from third-party lenders there are. So let me turn it over to Elise to walk through both the guidelines for approval and then the change.
Great, thanks, Mackie. I'm going to show you 3 slides here that we saw last meeting. So this first one here is just a reminder of what the resilience definition is that we're referencing in the statute. So that's the first thing here, and then what the statute required for these guidelines to be put forth. So of course, the Green Bank working with DEEP and Circa to get these guidelines completed. And with the new additions of resilience and EV charging infrastructure, actually, the language at the bottom here, everything that's highlighted is what was added. So showing a resilience study, if you're doing a resilience project, that shows that assesses the expected energy or resilience cost savings. So these projects are not subject to the savings to investment ratio. Resilience projects are exempt from that. However, there is still the requirement of doing an analysis to look at that cost savings, which needs to be included in the resilience study. We go to the next slide. And then just a quick reminder of what our approach is. So of course, this is a new venture for the CPACE team especially, but generally for the Green Bank, we're just kind of breaking into the resilience environmental infrastructure market. So really trying to collect information and data for these projects to try to understand what the market needs are, identifying common climate change adaptation and nature-based solutions as examples, utilizing existing resilience standards, such as the Fortified program, which is an IBHS program, and then also requiring that resilience study and how folks can submit applications to be accepted. And the next slide. So this is again just a quick reminder of what the eligibility and the requirements are. So standard eligibility for CPACE is still needed. So it needs to be a commercial property. the municipality needs to be a participating municipality, which means they've signed a resolution to opt in to participate in the program. And lender consent is still required. So we require a subordination of any existing property secured debt. The big exception here is the savings to investment ratio. So that's not applicable for resilience projects, resilience improvements or EV charging infrastructure. And then one of the new requirements, again, is to do that resilience study with an assessment of the cost savings. So again, not showing any minimum level of savings, but just the fact that they've assessed it needs to be included in the resilience study. And then some of the requirements are over here on the right. So pre-study worksheet, we put together a worksheet in conjunction with the folks at Circa to try to collect some data about these projects and also potentially help folks get to a point where they know what types of improvements they could make, resilience improvements they could make. The resilience study, this is an exhibit within Appendix O, which is the new appendix for resilience. And then if they're doing a fortified project, then we require all of the supporting documentation, any applicable information that they would submit to get their fortified standard certification as well. So that's just a little refresher of kind of what is in those guidelines. And we did receive public comments. We received one public comment from the CPACE Alliance, which is an organization of folks that work in the PACE world, but most of them are capital providers, and a lot of them are capital providers that participate in the Connecticut program. So many of the comments were really just kind of simple clarifications. We changed a little bit of wording here and there just to make things super clear. There was one, the third bullet point down here, there was one particular comment where they were looking to, they were asking if we could raise the maximum CPACE financing available for new construction projects. So up that total eligible construction cost from 35%, which is where it is now. That's the maximum amount of the TECC that we can finance with CPACE. They wanted to bump that up to account for additional resilience improvement expenses. And so after we looked through and kind of processed that request and looked at the way that we have incorporated resilience improvements into the guidelines, we came to the conclusion that by allowing the resilience improvements to be financed either as a standalone project through the technical standards set forth in Appendix O, which is the new Resilience Technical Standards Appendix, where they're able to access 100% financing, up to 100% financing for resilience improvements, as well as expanding the previous bonus technology section to now be bonus measures and include additional resilience improvements within that bonus measures section. We feel that we're expanding the accessibility to financing for resilience improvements without really needing to actually increase that overall maximum. So we decided that we would continue to keep the maximum percentage of CPACE financing for new construction projects at 35% of the TECC. Mackie, anything to add there?
Nope.
Okay, great. Okay. And then here is, so that kind of ends where the program guidelines are now, which is what we're hoping to receive approval for today. But then as Mackie mentioned, kind of immediately go right back out to public comment. This is a new addition. So as we were thinking about these, as Mackie said, thinking about kind of what types of projects we might receive. One of the things that really stood out to us was roof improvements. We see a lot of roof improvements that come in as related measures related to solar PV projects. So since we see so many of those now, we thought that it would probably be wise to look at kind of what those minimum standards might need to be to really keep within the spirit of the CPACE program and what we're trying to achieve with resilience. So the two things that we're looking to add on the right hand, or excuse me, the left-hand side here, when the applicant is using the standard SIR technical approach. So that's project needs to meet a positive savings to investment ratio. Roof improvements can still be considered an energy improvement, which is they're eligible to be an energy improvement right now. There just needs to be an energy assessment done to show those savings. An example of that is if they're re-roofing and they're adding additional insulation, for example. That's when a roof improvement could be considered an energy improvement. Or it can also be a related cost. So we allow for related or ancillary measures to clean energy improvements to be included in projects. Again, really good example. You guys see it all the time when we bring projects for approval. If you're doing a rooftop solar PV project, for example, a lot of times there's roof improvements or re-roofing that needs to happen. So that can be included in the cost, again, all subject to the savings to investment ratio. So there we're kind of keeping with the traditional clean energy standard SIR approach that we've had. And now with if the applicant is looking to use the resilience technical standard approach, we'd like to implement the requirement that if they are looking for roof improvements, that at minimum they need to meet the fortified roof standards in order for us to approve those. So again, trying to implement the requirement for demonstration of a minimum level of resilience in those projects that don't have kind of that security, I guess, around the savings to investment ratio that they would be subject to with the standard SIR approach.
Yeah, and all this is, we think, necessary because we think there could be, as designed, a potential loophole with roofs. Roofs is there. It's not like other resiliency measures because you have to, like, every building has to have a roof. It's a common large expense that every building faces every few decades, and you could look at the definition of resiliency and say a roof fits into that. So we could have people bringing us just a straightforward re-roofing project saying it's a resiliency measure and accessing 30-year CPACE financing for that. We don't want to become just a roof financing program. So unlike any other resiliency measure where you've got like sort of not attack, but a vulnerability that's driving it, a roof you're going to have to get. So we want to set a minimum standard for roofs, and the fortified is the sort of the best one we could find out there. So that's the intent here to specify these two pathways in the guidelines and create a minimum requirement.
Can I ask a question, Mackie, Elise? You hit exactly what I was thinking. Like, crap. I mean, look, at DCD, we hear people trying to do. They can come to you en masse on, hey, we can get financing for our roofs. Is there a cap on how many, in terms of dollars, allocated towards this as a program, so it doesn't cannibalize, solar projects? I'm just wondering.
We don't have. So this is as the administrator, as these guys. So there's arguably unlimited capital out there in the world through the third-party lenders.
Yeah.
Because you've got huge insurance companies and pension funds that are putting money into these CPACE lenders because these are fantastic assets. So our capital would probably at some point reach the limit, although I'd let Bert weigh in on that. But generally, I think there's enough capital available.
Is there, sorry, one last follow-up question. Is there a possibility that when you track the numbers, you look at trends projections, your standalone roof financing will eclipse other financing? And then we could reevaluate?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
Okay,
is that that's why we think this is so necessary, just put a standard in place, because I think it would be a problem if we're just financing run-of-the-mill roofs. But if we have a standard in place and we're getting a fortified roof, to me, that like, if we can start, I think we should finance as many of those as we can.
I understand.
Yeah,
Just,
unless there's a capital availability issue, then it becomes a priority.
I would love to hear Hank's opinion on this from a deep perspective, but I'm just, okay, I said my piece. Okay, thank you.
This is Lonnie. I just want to say quickly, I mean, a lot of this, I keep getting calls from people who still think I'm their state representative. And one way that they find out they have a defective roof is when they reach out for solar panels. So that begins a process of taking a look at the roof, and then suddenly the discovery is that the roof is really not ready for prime time. So it feels like they go hand in glove.
Yeah, that's what we see all the time as well. Sometimes the roof is the driver behind these projects even. So to Mackie's point, setting that minimum level of either, needing to be part of the SIR pathway that we do those projects now, or needing that minimum level of resilience is necessary. But you're absolutely right. We see that happen all the time too. Folks come for solar, and then they have a structural engineer come out and they realize they need roof improvements as well. So we definitely see that often also.
Can I ask one more follow-up? I'm sorry. Can you just remind us, what is the collateral on a standalone roof financing?
The property.
The property itself.
Assessment gives us a
Okay.
fair assessment on the entire property.
Okay.
So that would, to your original question on capital availability, that, at least from when we lend, the value of the property is going to put a cap on how much money we're willing to put in to a roof project, because we won't exceed 80%, or on an exception basis, 90% loan to value.
Okay.
So that will always constrict our lending on a per project basis. Other lenders might have their own different standards.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you. Oh, Matt.
And another restriction too, just to add, these projects are still subject to lender consent. So we still need to, if there is an existing mortgage holder, they still need to consent. So if they're not comfortable, with the arrangement of 20-year financing for a roof project, then they won't consent and we can't do the project. So that's still, a level of due diligence that needs to happen for these projects.
Okay, I'm seeing some hands up. Adrienne, did you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the team for coming up with the. It's fabulous. I was applauding here too. So I was very interested in seeing the resiliency supported. I just wondered if you had considered financing resiliency hubs.
I think Mac and Brian, you guys might know this a little bit better, but I think in terms of what would be covered under the CPACE program, I think a lot of the hubs that we've seen might not fall under the, we might not be able to finance projects with CPACE because I think they tend to be municipal state type properties. But Mackie, Brian,
Not always.
chime in.
Yeah, we'd love to do those. We're trying to educate ourselves right now more on what a resiliency hub is, what activity is happening in the state. If you're plugged into some of those efforts, we'd love to talk with you, because we want to figure that out. Can we bring CPACE to bear? Do we need something else? Some other type of product?
We're trying to set one up in Bridgeport in the South End.
Yeah, let's chat. I'll reach out.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Matt Ranelli's hands up.
Yep. Hi, just three quick either questions or thoughts. One is maybe for this fortified roof, one thing like the legislature would do is they would say, this, because it's a private standard, the fortified roof or similar standard acceptable to the Green Bank, just because you don't know what might be coming along next or what someone might propose that's acceptable, but not strictly this private standard, to give us some flexibility. And then two, I wonder, to the point of, we don't want to just have the whole project swallowed by financing roofs. can we sort of have an interpretation, sort of a guidance document ready to go that just sort of standalone roofs, are not, a resiliency project by themselves, or are, presumed not to be unless demonstrated otherwise? And then 3, I thought I heard at the beginning that, we're going to go ahead and adopt the program rules and then come back and do this. But it seems like, is there any reason we couldn't just amend? Why does this have to go back out to public comment if it's just a modification?
Elise, you want me to take them or you want to jump in?
I can jump in. So on your first point, Matt, I totally agree. I was actually thinking that myself as I was reading through these again this morning, that we should include a or similar, or equivalent type designation standard to fortified, because you're right, we don't know what's going to come out. And maybe there's things out there now that are just, just as good. So I think that's a great idea. The second question, I think was to add in some more guidance.
Yeah, can't be a standalone measure.
Yeah. I think we'll be able to achieve that between the 2 clarifications here that we've got, in terms of where a roof project can fit in. But certainly, if we need to add any additional language on top of that, we certainly can. Mackie, anything to?
Yeah, if that's the direction the board wants us to go, we can absolutely do that. We looked at the statute, which is, the program should be able to finance a resiliency measure. A roof, reading the definition, could be a resiliency measure. So, we're kind of going above what the statute gives us and setting a minimum standard for roofs for all the reasons we talked about. If, you want us to go further and say, you just can't do a roof, even if it meets the fortified standard on its own, we can certainly do that if we don't want to do, let the tool be used for standalone roof projects, even that meet this.
Yeah, Mackie, or maybe something in the middle that just says there's a presumption against just doing a fortified roof alone. But, if it can be demonstrated, that in certain cases, it is an actual resiliency project, give ourselves some wiggle room. Or honestly, I'd be fine with starting with it being we're just not doing them as standalone. We can always make the program more lenient. But either one of those, sort of a presumption against it that could be rebutted, or just say we're not doing them as standalone projects.
And do you mean from our lending perspective, or for all, sort of the administrator perspective, we should put that out there? Because certainly on the lending, it's much easier. And, you see every project for the most part, unless it's small, but I'm just trying to think through how we would use that discretion for a third party project.
Yeah, I don't know if we'd want to use it. I just offer it in case we're not ready to say, say no. So I don't really know. I haven't thought that through, to be honest.
And then on your third point on the timing, we could have went back and forth on this. Ended up, our understanding is there are at least one third party lender project that new construction project that intends to use the resiliency standards, not the loophole that potentially exists, but to move forward. So I don't think folks are tuned into this as a potential loophole, and obviously we're talking about it in a public meeting now, but we would anticipate coming back to y'all in a month, and you really can't throw together a CPACE project in a month. So we didn't think that there was really enough time to exploit the loophole by putting the guidelines in place now and letting projects that are ready move forward. But certainly if there's discomfort with that, we're talking about hopefully a month delay in finalizing the guidelines.
No, I'm fine with that.
Hank, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm fine with that. I just didn't realize, I was worried about, getting a slug of projects in that would be like the first wave, but if you're saying it's quick enough, I mean, obviously public input is always good.
Yeah, we don't have any no one tipped us off that they were like, they saw this. It was more just we sort of thought about it internally. So, yeah, I don't know that there's a bunch out there. I could be wrong, but I don't think we haven't got any indication that there's anyone out there that's already planning to use this for just a roofing product.
Okay, Hank Webster, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want, so one specific comment and one general comment. The specific is on the or similar standard. Just want to make sure there's a mechanism to actually, for Green Bank and the board potentially to vet whatever standard that is, so new standards come out all the time, right? And there might be various motives or industry efforts, but we want to make sure that it's still viable. And I know that the staff would, but I just wanted to sort of raise that. And just on a general note, yeah, we're pretty supportive of roof improvements and finding as many tools in the toolbox to be able to help get those roof improvements. We try and every time we're going after some federal money, we're trying to see if it can be used flexibly to do roof improvements, hopefully with an eye towards solar, but also just recognizing it is, I think, as Mackie pointed out earlier, such a critical piece of not having more problems accumulate. So we do really see it as resilience, and with increasing winds and increasing rains and who knows what kind of hail we'll get and all of that stuff because of the climate crisis. We certainly have I think a need in the state for it. So appreciate the efforts to expand our options here.
Just on the first point, I mean, these are, this isn't statutory language, this is our guidelines. So we have, if we'll write with Matt's recommendation, or other standard acceptable to Green Bank, that would give staff flexibility when projects come in that want to use a different standard to decide whether that's reasonable or not. Even if we didn't have that flexibility and we just stuck with fortified, if a new standard came out, we could vet it and then bring it, change to the guidelines to you. And so you're talking a couple months to implement a new standard formally into the guidelines if we wanted to. We have that, the statute is pretty open. So between the board and staff, we can build in new standards as we want.
I see John has a hand up again.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. One is, and you probably said I just missed it. Where does the standard come from? And I was just curious if you have any sort of sense of how much more a fortified roof costs than a normal roof.
A really good question. We do have a little bit of a sense of that. We worked with, to your second question, we worked with the fortified folks at IBHS to put a lot of this language in. And part of the additions to the new construction appendix include a chart that shows, if someone is looking to build to fortified standards, there's different percentages that they can access for a new construction project in terms of the total eligible construction costs for CPACE financing. So in doing that, we leaned on IBHS to help us understand what the additional costs are. And it seems like around 5% is what the delta is in terms of additional cost to do a fortified roof versus a traditional roof. I think those are national averages, but that seems to be the percentage that is can be applied. And I'm sorry, what was your first question?
Where did the standards come from?
The fortified standards?
Yeah.
Through it's an IBHS program, which
What
I
is
never remember.
IBHS?
I never remember the acronym, but it's the Insurance someone can help me here. The
The
insurance.
Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. It's
There you go.
essentially like a nonprofit that the insurance industry has created to, to do research technologies and everything to inform the work that they do. So it's a, very established, they've been around for decades, very established nonprofit that, is tied into the insurance industry. And there's a lot of work in Connecticut right now to incorporate that standard into, I think, building codes, and also to have our insurance industry adopt it in terms of, if offering premium reductions if you build your building to that standard.
Thank you.
I see Brenda's hand up. Brenda?
Actually, Mackie just answered my question. I was gonna ask what the insurance industry what was trending there. But I wonder if it's roofs today, what will be the next, kind of under this category around resiliency, what will be next? If you're able to answer that question.
You're asking Mackie or Elise?
Asking anyone, because, we might find ourselves here again with, another part of the home that needs to be fortified. And I just wondered if there was any trending, any trends around that.
I think we'll see. That's my, I mean, this is, I think this is we'll kind of see what sticks. I think that was really, at least my idea, my approach behind the design of these guidelines is to try to really see what the market needs are and what's out there. Fortified commercial, at least actually it's across all of the different fortified categories. There's the roof fortified, then there's also silver and gold standards beyond that. So there's additional resilience standards through the fortified program that really focus on other like building envelope aspects, so windows and doors, really the structure of the building. So we've built all of that in to our program guidelines as a way to access this financing. So to your question, that might help us get a little bit more intel on, if we see a lot of folks wanting to use the fortified standard, then we know there's a real need for just general envelope improvements, to make buildings more resilient. But I think we'll see, what we get back, but others can chime in on, your opinions on what we might see out there.
Yeah.
Tom Flynn, is your hand up?
It is. Quick question, and this might be a silly question, but as it relates to these roof improvements, is this only for our investment in something that might go on the roof, solar panels and the like? This isn't for any financing, this is just for things specifically related to the roof?
Yes. So what we're showing here is specifically for the roof itself, so the improvement to the roof. So we're showing the two different pathways here that a roof improvement project could potentially take. One is the way kind of that we look at roof improvements today, with the the guidelines that we have in place now, the standard SIR approach, and then the other is incorporating a minimum standard for fortified.
Yeah, I guess what I'm not, and forgive me, I'm a little lost on this. I got distracted for a moment. This is about us making sure that any investment in their roof, which would qualify them for financing from us, hits a minimum standard related to this fortified roof, correct?
That's
Correct.
exactly.
And it's only for if they're going to do another energy project with us, or is this they can come to us just when they're going to do the roof?
It could be both, either. So if it is part of an energy project, then yes, but the fortified standard specifically is if it's going to be a standalone or part of a broader resilience project. So that would be using the technical standards in Appendix O specifically.
Tom, it's more the latter point you make is the important one here, that we want to set a CPACE is it's a public tool that we're giving to lenders in exchange for getting a benefit. Resiliency measures, for the most part, seawalls, swells, things like that, those are sort of obviously resiliency measures. A roof is kind of a gray area, and we felt like, given the uniqueness of it as a measure, we need to set a minimum standard, unlike other resiliency measures, so that we don't just become a standard roofing financing tool.
Can you do me a? Can you define, just so that I'm very specific, define what you mean by resiliency?
Go back 2 slides, please. So
yeah,
it's we're using the statutory definition that when the legislature expanded CPACE to finance resilience measures, this is the definition they handed us. So again, we looked at this and said, well, heck, someone could come to us and say a roof meets that definition. I'm just doing the cheapest run-of-the-mill roof I could do, but it still meets this definition. So we're gonna use CPACE financing for it. And under this definition, we didn't see a way we could say no. And we think, because of what, just the nature of CPACE, and that we're using a public tool to get a public benefit, there needs to be some sort of benefit that we're getting. And unlike other measures, which, clear, like I said, seawalls, things like that, which clearly are additional, adding additional resilience, a roof is a unique one and should have some minimum standard.
Right.
John, I see your hand up again.
No, I just don't know how to get rid of it. So if somebody has, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or observations related to?
Just before we go to the resolution, the question from Matt, do we need to go to public comment? I'm still a little unclear whether we do or do not need to, so can we just clarify?
Yeah, great question. We felt like we do, because this is, I think, a substantive change. We're going beyond the statute to require a minimum standard for a measure that meets the definition.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought it requires public comment, given that.
And in the gap, you still have projects that can proceed before, okay, yeah, I'm clear. Okay, I don't know if the rest of the board is. Okay,
Thank you. I forgot to answer that.
Just to follow up on that, Mac, because I don't think we've talked, I think you talked to Alex about that. I think if this revision was born out of the comments you already received, then I think you'd be okay not to, because you would say that was part of the process. Then yeah.
Tom, is that you again? Tom Flynn? Okay, just another random hand. Oh no, that's a real hand. No, okay,
that's a real hand. Quick question here, and I'm just trying to wrap my arms around it, so I apologize. I don't want to waste anybody's time. Part of these fortified roof standards, does it show that it saves energy? Is it specifically related to energy savings, or is this resiliency broadly defined?
Resiliency, broadly defined. Yep.
So this is really expanding ours, and you said the CPACE program and the like. This is expanding us beyond our original reason for existing, which is to help save in energy costs and conserve energy. And this is more broadly defined than that. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. The legislature expanded the program to include resiliency, like exactly that. You're right. Not energy, a whole new universe of measures that do not produce energy savings, but instead meet that definition of resiliency. So yeah, this is us implementing that legislative expansion.
If I could add to this, only because I've had this before I looked up, on February 28th, 2024, Governor Lamont's bill, I just want to add this, I could add this to the chat, but Order 21.3 claims that, it does have savings attached, right? Resiliency, roofs. with the Department of Insurance, where NIBS reports that the building above code saves $6 for every $1 of cost. So it increases the property values, as you stated, right? So
who does it save that to? That goes to an earlier question. Has the insurance companies come back and said they'll give reductions on premium?
and that's where Commissioner Mays comes in. In fact, I had dinner once with him talking about resiliency and roofs. That's why it's so like this is such a big topic. But I'm just saying, just Tom. I mean, for me, DCD, at least in our conversation with Department of Insurance, it makes sense. It does expand, I think, the original charter and mission of the Green Bank a bit, right? From just solar and energy
statute.
within statute.
Yeah.
So it is a big change, and so I think it makes sense. Yeah.
My problem with it and I don't know what I need to consider, right, is when we look at some of our past actions and the like, there, as part of a financial institution, there's a cost benefit involved relative to return, right? Because we measure in our projects how much energy this is going to save for the public good, right? How much we're not going to have to generate, how much we save, conservation, the whole thing. And we've talked a lot about how do we show that versus us spending public monies or lending public monies to these institutions. When we just talk about resiliency, I have a harder time quantifying the cost benefit and saying it's a financial institution. What are we getting out of it? Like, what is the, other than the fact that the homeowner or the commercial property owner gets a benefit of having a better roof, and if something should go wrong, it's more resilient and less apt to damage. And I'm just having a hard time wrapping up my mind around it and how that actually serves the quote unquote green bank. That's where my head's at on this.
Could I ask a question back to Mac and Elise based on what Tom's saying? So say this program, we all assume it's going to be very successful, right? It's successful. And now you have a number of CNI organizations who have newer fortified roofs. Does that make it easier for them to come back to the Green Bank and now say, we want to pursue an actual solar in our roofs up to standard from a resiliency standard? Does it make it easier? Is there higher propensity for solar projects in the future because they're fortified?
Well, and that was part of my, right, that was part of my, that was part of my original line of questioning. If we have somebody that comes to us with an energy project and they say, we want to put, solar panels on our roof, going back and saying, well, we're going to evaluate the structure to make sure you have a fortified roof so that our investment in the energy, in the solar panels or whatever it is relative to that structure is more secure. I think that is absolutely 100% within what we should be doing, right? We don't want to put solar panels or install really anything on a property that we don't think is well maintained and to very good standards so that our investment is protected. In this instance where it's just somebody doing a roof and it has nothing to do with them doing solar panels or doing something energy related, to me, and it's just a little bit of a bridge too far as to what we've always tried to do is focus on energy and saving energy and that's just where I'm coming down right now.
Let me make a few points of clarification. So, yeah, I understood everything. What we're talking about here has no, well, I should say no, it doesn't, from our lending perspective, does not require us or commit us to doing anything. This is purely the administrative, the the statutory CPACE administrator role that we have. Now, separate from the Green Bank enabling statute, there is a section which creates the CPACE program and charges us with running it. The legislature decided to expand that CPACE tool to include resiliency. So we have to come up with a set of guidelines that the CPACE market can use to lend into those measures that the legislature said they want CPACE to be able to use. So on our lending side, we can just say we're not going to. That's great that CPACE can do that. We'll put the guidelines in place so that lenders and borrowers that want to pursue that can. And on our end, we're just not going to do it. To your point, we're energy focused, and we're going to focus our dollars on that. That's absolutely something we can do. If we want to go a little further and on our administrator role, restrict the, sort of what the statute is telling us to do. I mean, that is something we can do to essentially, I guess, not.
Can I ask you a question? Because, and maybe I'm just not following. When we say administer, like you just said, hey, this is CPACE and ministerial, it's not lending. What does that mean? Give me just a brief example of what did the legislature ask us to do specifically with the CPACE program relative to resiliency if it's not about funding? And forgive the ignorance of my questions, by the way. I'm not trying to be difficult nor waste anybody's time.
So CPACE at its heart is using a public tool, the benefit assessment, to secure lending into some measures that fulfill some public policy benefit. Initially, that was an energy benefit. So the legislature said, Green Bank, we're creating this program. You're in charge of developing a set of guidelines as to what projects meet, this energy benefit we've laid out in statute, approving projects that meet that, and sort of developing the general market, working with towns to bring them in. But it envisioned having private lenders fund those projects and secure it with that assessment. And our role in that is to evaluate the project to make sure that they meet the statutory and programmatic language. So in this case, that's what we're talking about. The legislature decided to expand the public benefits that CPACE can be used to fund to resiliency. So we're creating the guidelines.
When we say CPACE can and my apologies for interrupting, that to me implies that Green Bank funds would be mirrored with private investment funds to help fund these resiliency projects. Am I misunderstanding that?
Yes, there are.
So that is lending. That is a financial.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're correct that you're misunderstanding it. We are one of dozens of lenders that offer CPACE financing.
Yep.
And all of us and the third party lenders do it under the guise of these program guidelines. So this would apply to all lenders. We on our own can decide, like I said, we can decide not to do resiliency measures at all. But on the staff side, we felt like, given the legislature, made this expansion and that we have to implement it for the benefit of all of the lenders in the market. And then we can decide what role as a lender we'll play.
But that's a private transaction between the other lenders and the party with the roof, and we don't have to be involved in that.
That's correct.
And what gives us? Why are we the right people? Do we have any type of liability, or how are we the right people to evaluate your roof? I mean, we're energy people. We're not roof experts and stuff. Do we have anything to do with that?
That's why we love this fortified standard, because it is that all the evaluation is done by a national group that are experts in this and has a set of standards. So if you can get their stamp of approval, we're saying that's enough for us to show that it is resilient.
You guys evaluated what this does to workload on our staff, or what it takes away from our mission, or does it take away nothing?
The potential workload would be Catherine Duncan, who oversees all the third-party lenders and handles the projects that bring us to approval. If there's an upsurge in projects that she has to review, it could take more and more of her time, which would require us to hire more staff, which we charge fees to third-party lenders when they bring us projects to approve. So if we start to get more of those and the fees aren't enough to cover our staff work, then we can increase those fees.
Hank Webster, do you have a question?
I think Matt Rinelli was ahead of me, so I will gladly yield the
Okay.
floor.
Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Hank. First of all, Tom, thanks for those questions. I think they really illuminate probably discussions we'll have going forward on a lot of these things. I think a lot of that, to me, and I know I was the one who said, can we do this without public comment? But I think a lot of that discussion says to me, I think it'd be good to put these out for public comment, also based on like DECD's information they have. I mean, we may get a lot of interesting information through that process. And again, as long as we're not running the risk that we'll have a deluge of roofing projects, might be good for us to get, more of that information, which may help us, firm up the language we want to use. I will say also that discussion makes me think, I do think, from my personal point of view, we ought to look at from not just from our lending point of view, certainly from our lending point of view, but maybe from our administrator role point of view, of not, at least initially, having standalone roof projects for a couple of reasons. One is, let's see what else comes in. We don't want to have a lot of these legacy projects. And two, although the third-party lenders don't really affect us other than processing the applications, as Mackie, you kept saying, it's a public benefit, this CPACE, and it reminded me of how hard this Green Bank staff worked to go to every town to get CPACE agreements from these towns. And, if these benefit assessments become increasingly common, all the lenders we deal with for whom are going to have to allow priority position are going to get more requests. They're going to be requests that, although historically have been for energy matters, are now going to be all over the map for different kinds of improvements. And I just wonder if that's going to exhaust some of these lenders or some of the goodwill, or if there is any, to getting the energy one. So I do think, even though it's a public good, we ought to be sparing, or at least strategic, about how we allow people to access that public good, so we don't exhaust it. I mean, I know there's no limit on money, but banks may be wondering, like, yeah, why are you trying to get a priority, or trying to get me to allow, this CPACE loan for a roof? It's all new to me, so it could cause a little bit of disruption in our core purpose that we use CPACE for. So those are my two updates. One, yes, I think we should do the public process. Two, I think from a lending point of view, we might want to pump the brakes. And from an administrator point of view, from my vantage point, I think we should pump the brakes as well. We can always learn more and lighten up later.
Yeah,
Hank Webster, you want to kick in?
Just really quickly, I mean, I think these are all good questions to be raising and good answers for us to be hunting down, and appreciate what staff has already done to put together this proposal. And just wanted to acknowledge, that this is, I think, responsive to what the legislature, directed in terms of expansion of Green Bank's role beyond the historic focus on energy. So, this is, while there are questions to answer, I do want to acknowledge this isn't just, pulling it out of thin air, right? There are gonna be challenges, but I, again, appreciate the efforts that have gone into it so far, and I think we'll collectively all get there.
Tom Flanagan?
Yeah, my apologies. I'll be brief. Matt, I thought you raised some excellent points there. One very specific question I would have is the agreements we have with the towns to allow kind of CPACE lending to be, ahead of them in the financing world. Does it allow for us to expand beyond energy projects? And how are the towns going to feel, to your point, if they're asked to take a further backseat for projects that are beyond energy specific?
It's a great question. Let's see, the towns any liens for real estate taxes are senior to the CPACE assessment. So they're actually the only ones that have priority over CPACE.
Right. Yeah.
From that perspective, if they have other assessments, sewer, water, if they
Right.
use utilities and things like that. Farnan, correct me if I'm wrong. I think our interpretation is that the CPACE assessment is senior to those. I believe it's probably would need to be tested in court, but that's how we view it. So for town's primary concern, real estate taxes, we're not senior to them. In terms of the agreements, we will double check that, but I think we're still covered under that language in those, but it's a good flag. We'll double check that to make sure. And yes, I also think Matt made great points. There's a constant tension in the national CPACE market to dilute the public benefits for CPACE. When I made the comment about there being unlimited money, that's a positive thing, but it's also a negative thing in the sense that CPACE is a fantastic asset, and you'll have people that want to get as much money into it as they can, which means diluting the standards so they can get as much money into it as they can. So, I think we need to always be careful, and we're constantly getting pressured, especially the new construction side, to reduce the standards that we impose. You saw that here with the reflection of them wanting to increase the amount of capital that can go into a project. So the legislature expanded it, so we feel like we have to implement it. But I think Matt's right that we need to always be vigilant to make sure that we're not just always finding new things you can use to finance with CPACE, because at some point it gets away from that core mission of getting a public benefit in exchange for this very powerful financing tool.
So do we need to move to rewrite Resolution 4? Following a continued discussion?
If the board is still comfortable with the fundamental premise of approving the guidelines as is, and there's that's sort of part one, and then the second part was to direct us to, which I don't think is in the resolution, was because we don't really need a vote for it, but direct us to develop that language around the roofs and take it out for public comment, which we would then come back to you for formal approval of. So as long as all that still stands, I think this resolution still works.
Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 4?
This is Matt. I'll move approval of the resolution modified to direct staff to go back out to public comment regarding the fortified roofs and follow up on the other strands of this discussion as they see fit.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Moving on. That was a good conversation. That was, we're getting to the heart and soul of all of this. Let's see. Item number 5. So this is investment program updates and recommendations, and I think it's Bert and Brian Farnan. Bert?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Perfect, Bert. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry. I was on 2 different modes of communication there because the bandwidth in our Stanford office sometimes peters out. So we'll give it a go here. Yeah, actually we're Larry Campano is going to assist in the presentation here. This is related to a Posigen. The first item is related to a Posigen equity raise that we have been offered the ability to participate in to maintain our equity position so we're not diluted. The company has been raising a good amount of equity over the last a bit over 2 years. This would bring the equity raise. Prior raises were about 150 million. This would bring the equity raise total for the last 2 years to about 165 million, which is good to see the faith that the investor group has in the company. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Larry to walk us through more details here.
Great. Thank you, Bert, and thank you for having me to speak about this approximate $57,000 incremental equity investment in the form of a convertible note. There's a bit of history here with our involvement in Posigen and the various raises. Most recently, we came to the board in August of 23 for $121,000 investment. This is under the similar terms of that investment. I like to characterize it as all carrot and no stick. It's very similar to the terms of the $121,000 investment, the most recent August one, but without some of the it was kind of like forcing our hand a little bit in that one. This is a little bit like I said, all carrot and no stick. So the reason for the raise, there is a $15 million raise right now, and we're invited to participate along with it. So there's definitely $15 million of investors that have already committed, and we are invited to participate under the similar terms. The reason for the investment is they're doing multiple raises company-wide right now, and they're doing multiple growth projects, including significant IT infrastructure investment. And while those raises and while those investments are all taking place, they do not want to be forced to take a deal with any of their current fundraising, because they don't want to take terms that aren't the most favorable. They want their time to be able to negotiate properly. So this $15 million is going to kind of be a little bit of cushion for them. Our current equity position with the company is $366,000. Based on an independent valuation, we estimate that our position right now is about worth that. The actual number we came up with was $379,000. But it is feasible on all of the different scenarios that could be considered with all of the fundraisings and exits and Series 2, but it is feasible. The investments team has come up with some figures that our current investment of $366,000 is worth around $450,000 to $1 million if certain things happen. And this incremental investment would be valued along that. This is just one additional opportunity for us to invest along with the group and to participate in this fundraise. I do recommend it along with my colleagues in the investment team, and we ask for you to vote for this resolution, but I can answer any questions now.
Seeing no questions. Do we have any questions or observations?
I'm sorry, Bettina, I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, okay. Tina.
This has to close today?
It was, yes, thank you for pointing that out. It was scheduled a few weeks ago, and they delayed the close date to coincide with this board meeting, as we said that we would like the opportunity to participate, but we need approval, so they postponed the close date. Yes, it's today. But most of the investors have already made their decision and committed, especially the $15 million. That's already there.
So you've got to get a wire out, like.
I don't think the wire needs to go out, but
Okay.
I think if we approve this resolution, it doesn't. I already said to them that that's not really going to happen. But as long as we approve it, that's what counts to them.
Okay, gotcha.
But the good question. I've been worried about that last week myself.
Tick tock,
Approval.
tick tock.
Yeah, approval and signing the documents.
Yes. Those are all ready.
And the downside is everything is lost. I see 100% loss is possible.
Yeah, with any equity investment that could happen, I think that's a low probability, and things are trending in the correct position. But yes, and with any equity investment, you could have 100% loss.
Okay.
So, just one quick question, Larry. What is our current ownership percentage, and what would the dilution mean if we did not vote in favor? What would it drop to?
Well, I don't want to give a weird answer, but most of our position is in convertible notes, so it's not exactly a percentage. It really is like a dollar figure, and the figure they have on their books is somewhere like $750,000 because we've gotten extra bonuses along the way. But yeah, I'll just get a very pointed answer is all of these $15 million folks would be above us. So they would kind of get their preference before us, and we would lose the opportunity to be in that position on the waterfall once money starts being paid out.
Okay.
And what's the ability to cash out? Like if we wanted to cash out in June or July, how easy or difficult would that be?
It's not really liquid like that. The cash out opportunity would happen when there is a fundraise, an equity fundraise, which we think is a good probability, and they're working on it. They are working on it. So it would be farther down the line once distributions start being made.
So this is kind of a buy and hold investment. We're not.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And if it wasn't for our substantial debt position, I mean, we don't really take a lot of equity investments, but we have $6 million in debt with them also. So this is really more of like just a little, we've accumulated this over the years, basically as bonuses to our participation in the debt. That's how we really cashing out.
Two-thirds of the current investment really came from a conversion of late fees and a little bit of interest from the company. So it really hasn't been cash per se, but that was done back in 2022, I believe.
Yes.
So. As far as the percentage ownership interest, it's less than 0.5%.
This is more about us having some real upside potential with our other financing into Posigen. This is our chance to say, hey, listen, if you were to have other larger investors, if you were to someday go public, this is our chance to get the major upside.
And I'll also add to that, Brian, that I think a really great extra bonus to the Green Bank is that one of the main reasons of this $50 million is just to demonstrate a positive balance sheet and investor confidence as they go out and raise both debt and equity. And we are going to participate in that next debt round. We'll be coming back to the board in a month from now. In anticipation of a much larger debt facility that we'll be proposing with the Loans Programs Office. So there's a lot of great positive momentum, and as Brian said, we'll be able to participate in that.
Yeah, subject to board approval.
Subject to board approval.
So this is kind of coming back to me now. So they're indebted to us, and on top of that, we're kind of propping them up to make them look stronger on the balance sheet to other investors. Is that kind of a way you can look at it?
No. This is really this incremental. We're not material to this capital raise. This is really for our benefit to sustain our level of ownership interest by topping up what we have. But this is $57,000 cannot really be considered material in the context of a $15 million capital raise.
But when I said that, I just meant that the momentum is continuing. So, they won't
From
have
the
to hold back
15 million.
Yeah,
From the 15 million.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
Okay,
That
and then I was kind of
is
wondering, and it is a very small amount, so I was wondering why it would even have to come to the board, but I guess.
It needs to come to the board specifically because the way the investments team traditionally has viewed the requirement to get approval from the board or the deployment committee is to look at the overall relationship with a credit. So even though this is very small, the overall credit falls above certain levels, so which requires us to come to the board. So also,
Okay.
And the one thing I would add to that,
Also-
Bettina, is that, oh, go ahead, Barry, go.
Also, the ability for staff to approve is only within what are called programmatic investments, such as a CPACE. So there has to be an established program that has come before the board, where then staff is allowed to approve, subject to our limitations of I believe the $1 million, upwards of $1 million overall cap. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Nope, that was exactly the point I was going to make, was that staff only has authority to outlay investment dollars and approve programs through a programmatic approach.
See, I do listen to our general counsel.
Oh, you're the best.
That's great.
Okay, I guess my little concern, and I'll shut up now, is, I mean, I don't want to get us in too deep, but this is a very small amount and I'm fine.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns, observations? John? I see your hand.
I wish some members of the legislature could listen to some of these board meetings and get a better understanding of how conscientious and deliberate and thoughtful these processes are, and not just kind of throwing money out willy-nilly, because for some reason some folks in the General Assembly just have this odd view of us that is really contrary to both the mission and to how we conduct ourselves. And it's just these are important discussions, and people are serious about this stuff. So I don't know, I'm impressed by us.
Well, I always say I'm proud that we're not a rubber stamp board, and really invite full discussions of all of these things, and people can listen to them on our website if they want to check out our board meetings.
And
they're recorded.
Yes, they are. And might I say thank you, John. We on the investments team as well as the financing programs team. We take these transactions seriously. We deliberate. We consider all aspects of the transaction, and we consider ourselves stewards of ratepayer funds. So that's how we approach our jobs. Impact, but from a sensible point of view. Madam Chair.
Okay, so I see no more questions. Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 5?
A motion.
Do I hear a second?
Bettina,
I'll
I'll
second
second.
Adrian. Sorry.
Go ahead, Adrian.
No, go ahead, Bettina.
Yeah, let's have, come on, Bettina.
Bettina seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Like moving on to the second aspect of this.
Yeah, 5A2. Yeah, we kind of shoehorned this one in. So this, I'm going to do this with Brian Farnan. This is just what you see on the screen is just a recap what the board approved in January. There's no change in any request for approval, any financial levels. Those are all the same. But when we went to documentation on an amendment that allowed us to the approval, which allowed us to go up a little bit prior to the full upsize by Brookfield. The initial upsize is the middle column. The final upsize is the final column on the right. When we were going through that, our counsel at Wigan and Dana asked some very good questions about our board approvals in terms of how certain things were phrased in the board approval, which were not as clear as they would have preferred. So they said, well, look, if this should come up upon review with state auditors or something like that, you really want things to kind of line up more precisely. We took that point. So what has been circulated to the board, and Brian Farnan can comment more specifically, is what we did was we took the January memorandum that we circulated to the board and we redlined changes to make it absolutely clear what we were talking about. And there's certain terms in the documentation that we felt were helpful to bring into the memorandum. So that's all that's going on here. Again, there's no change in exposure, no change in how we're advancing the funds, but it's really just making that more clear. And also what we did do is, since there were two advances that were made in accordance with that middle column that you're seeing there right there, we updated the outstanding amounts to bring them forward to March. So that's what's going on here. But Brian Farnan, did you have any comments you wanted to make on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, Bert's 100% correct. And if it wasn't for the fact that we were doing these other draws based on the January approval, this probably never would have came up. But as we're kind of reading through the document, yeah, maybe we could have written that better. But there's no substantive change. This is really just, dotting I's, crossing T's. Just to have it spot on from the way what the transaction is.
And if you go to the next slide, please, you'll see how we've adjusted the resolution. So we're using very, very specific terms. The term loans has a specific meaning within the second lien financing agreement, as well as the Connecticut PBI term loans. So that those are two distinguishing features within the second lien facility. So that was recommended by council that we actually spell that out. So that's all we have here.
Any questions? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 6?
I motion.
A second? Do I hear a second?
This is Dominic. I'll second.
Thank you, Dominic. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. And
Okay.
moving on, Bert,
Yes.
you're going to talk about this next item?
Yeah, this is also a minor item. A year ago, we came to the board. If we go to the next slide, please. We came to the board to we have a facility called the Low Income Multifamily Energy Program, which Capital for Change administers. I mean, meaning that they're the ones that are actually lending. We're providing the funding for those loans. So we lend to Capital for Change, and they lend to multifamily properties that are doing energy efficiency improvements. There's an availability period. A year ago, that period was running out in March of 2024. Sorry, it was running out in March of 2023. We extended it 1 year to March of 2024 this year, and they've asked us to extend the availability period for 1 additional year. If you look on the next slide, this will give you just an overall structure view. Inclusive Prosperity is actually part of this facility. They can provide some funding into it. They haven't yet, because we haven't gotten to the level that would trip their participation in the structure, but they're part of it. So this just shows you the total amount that's available, a little over 7.5 million, and a portfolio of projects, which if we go to the next slide, you'll see the projects that are currently outstanding, about $3.3 million to these 6 properties, and they have a pipeline of transactions that they want to use this facility for. So the ask is, if we go to the resolution, which is I think on the next page, is just to extend the availability period, as it says in the first resolved, to March 31 of 2025. So it's a 1-year extension.
Any questions or concerns? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 7?
I motion, Lonnie.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Do I hear a second?
Matt, second.
Matt, second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Moving on. That brings us up. So we began the year by wanting more, specific analytics and day-to-days of where we are in the legislative process. And so James DeSantos is here. And James, and I think Brian Farnan too.
Yep, James and I will tag team this. And actually, James is heading up to the Capitol. There's an environmental day from 9 to 11. So it's a good way to network with some of the environmental groups who are great allies of ours. So obviously, the session is in full mode right now. 23 legislative committees as of today are going to be finishing up their the kind of that first initial public hearing process. Some of the bills that are really important: Green Monster Bill. This is kind of the big legislative vehicle moving forward. We testified on this, really setting kind of aggressive targets to meet clean energy goals. Now, James, we have you on, or do you want me to run with that? I don't even know if you're, I don't know, he may still be in transit. All right, perfect. All right. Other major items out there is we also have, we can go to the next slide. The governor's bill is one I really want to make sure we talk about, and this includes things like tax increment financing. It deals with nature-based solutions. This is something that Joanna, our board member from OPM, has been very much involved with. And really, that's the reason why she's not here today, is she's going to be testifying shortly. And the big thing for us this legislative session was to really just put together a process, because things come up, whether it's, like last year, for example, it was the solar bill that deal with school construction, where it wasn't our bill, but we were named throughout. And how do we deal with things like that? Or there were items like how to deal with the closing of Mira and energy, and how to deal with trash in the state of Connecticut. And we were kind of pulled into that. So we wanted kind of a more formal process. So we go to the next slide too. So we want to have a more process where, we can track these bills. These bills are going to be available to all the board members with our comments. We have a process to go to our board chair, Lonnie, and to go to our vice chair with Deep and Hank as these items arise, to discuss, to debrief them on them, and then kind of make a consensus decision. Okay, we should bring this to we need to bring this to the board. Maybe we don't want to comment here, maybe we do. And it's a much more collaborative approach and a much more structured approach versus what we've done in the past. So it's a really exciting time up at the legislature, and we're pretty, even though it's what's referred to as a short session, we're pretty confident that some major energy legislation is going to come out that's going to help our mission. Next slide. And that might be the last one. Oh, no, perfect. Now I want to turn over. We go to that next slide. This is the hydropower task force, where Mariana Treef has been the House Majority Leader appointment, and really in many ways has been a leader on that task force. Mariana, are you on? Do you want to?
I'm on.
All right, perfect. I'm gonna pass it over to you. But before I do that, I just want to end with the fact that we've got a much better, more robust legislative process and approach in place, with James on board and with the feedback we've gotten from Lonnie and Brian and others and Katie. And we're cautiously optimistic it's gonna be a really good session. So Marianne, I'm gonna turn over to you now. You can kind of give a little update. And this is a good example of how that process has been working out in real time.
Thank you, Brian. And hi, everybody. This is Mariana Treef from the investments team. As Brian mentioned, there was a mandated legislatively mandated task force to study existing hydropower assets, review their benefits, and submit a report on findings and recommendations. I was nominated to that task force by the House Majority Leader. And my nomination had a lot to do with all the work that we've been doing in the Green Bank to support the world of hydro. There's other participants of that task force include Deep, Pura, environmental nonprofit, and others from the hydropower industry. If you could go into the next slide. As a result of that task force, there's 4 policy considerations which are being finalized and drafted. Green Bank plans to sort of support these policy considerations, subject to revisiting that support if there are any major changes, as these are getting finalized within the next about 10 days, and then reporting back to the Green Bank chair per the legislative process once that's been finalized. So there are 4 proposed recommendations, all of which intend to provide steady cash flows to hydropower projects, allowing them to make investments to improve efficiency or environmental compliance, and that will in turn allow these projects to be able to secure financing for those improvements from Green Bank or others in the market. So these 4 considerations are a deep solicitation of hydropower, a standard service tariff for existing hydropower assets, a couple of changes or modifications to the Class 1 definition, which will allow for projects that came online before 2003 to be designated as Class 1, and a couple of changes also to the NRES program to accommodate for the realities of hydro. So that's the quick update. Happy to answer any questions about the task force or the process that we've been engaged in there.
If I could, Madam Chair, this is Brian, just a comment. Going back to last fall, so just building off of Brian's comments earlier, so the board approved of a legislative process. It's kind of the first time we've done this in the history of our organization. We laid out a process. We're now implementing that process. January, James reported out on what he thought the bills were going to be. March is this board meeting. We've got the April board meeting. We've got the June board meeting. March is a great time because we're at that moment where usually all the bills that are out are out. So, Brian just provided that overview, and the materials that we provided in the docket speak to all the different areas that we're working on. James and Brian are going to make available a link to a page where board members can check things out. So we're learning about this. We're trying to implement this process to the best of our abilities. And as we do that, things like this, the hydropower task force comes up where the task force is making policy recommendations. And we have an amazing member of the task force in Mariana. We're having worked on those 2 projects there and just contributing great things to the dialogue of that task force. So we really wanted to not only share what those considerations are going to be from a task force that will ultimately lead to a policy proposal that will come in front of the Energy and Technology Committee, but also just get the board's guidance in terms of how we should think about things like this in the future, because our legislative process, we should continue to improve it. And here what we're talking about is a task force and a staff member being involved in a task force. We've got this, we have our chairs and vice chair who we can present these things to, but we just want to get your all's perspective on how we should be thinking about task forces in this timing, any things we should be thinking about, because we'll likely come back in the fall with revisions to the legislative process to continue to improve it. So that was where we were coming from, not just sharing the great work that Mariana's doing, which is fantastic, but also that part of the legislative process.
I should say too, I'm getting some questions. We have voted on all of our outstanding resolutions, so we have no more votes, but are very eager for any input anybody has on all of these things.
Looks like John, maybe you have your hands up.
Yes, I do. I wanted to say that the tracking a hyperlink that you're going to be establishing, that is great. And it's great because climate change has really arrived in the legislature in this session. As you said, it's a short session, but there are lots of bills, and people are really beginning to think about it as they should be. I mean, it still has some ways to go to reach where it ought to be in terms of priorities, but there's a real difference between prior years and this year. And it's great to see the Green Bank participating appropriately in all those discussions.
Tom Flynn.
Yeah. First of all, thanks. And John, thanks for your comments earlier about kind of the deliberate measures we take. I've been a member of this body for a long period of time at this point, and one of the things that's made me proud is the work that you all do and the fact that we've kept to our knitting as it relates to energy. So something like this task force on hydropower and the like, I fully support the Green Bank having representatives on there because I think you'll bring something really good to the table. And I think it's good for us. I do get a little bit concerned going back to our earlier conversations that we get dragged into things that are beyond energy. And I think one of the reasons I've been proud and one of the things that you all have done very well and raised your national reputation is you've really stuck to what you're good at. And I think because you're good at that, and because we've gained a reputation of being good at that through the hard work of the staff, it's going to be very easy to be pulled into things that I would believe are beyond your scope, regardless what the legislative body says your scope is. I just think staying narrow, staying true to the original mission, staying with things that we can impact and things we can measure will continue to make you do the good work and be as effective as you can. And I'm just concerned we'll get pulled into too many other directions that are beyond our expertise just because you've shown that you're good at it. And I'm concerned that it'll dilute all the good work that we've done to date. I might be a little bit overstating it, but I've seen it happen in the past with companies and consulting firms and the like, where you get good at something and you get dragged in too many other directions and you lose your focus. And I think we've done really good work for the people of the state here, and I'd hate to see that get diluted. That's my soliloquy.
Welcome to success, right?
Hey, yeah, you become a victim of your own success, right?
That's
It's
true.
absolutely
Yeah.
true.
Reward for great work is more work.
Yeah. Well, just maybe just building off of Tom's comments. I agree with all of that, Tom. I think, where we succeed in helping the state implement its public policies, one big metric for us is enabling more private investment to come in, because over time, it's that private investment that's going to lead to scale and replicability, right? So we may take some risk up front to get the private sector in and involved. It also forces us to think about how we exit certain markets, or how we think about the evolution of markets in terms of resilience hubs, as Adrian was talking about earlier. Like we can achieve multiple objectives today, but really thinking about how we use our skill set. I think a lot of people are going to be like, well, the Green Bank has solutions. We don't have all the solutions. We have a really fantastic team, a fantastic board, policies that shine a light on the direction we should be heading. We got to take baby steps when we're thinking about these new things and demonstrate how results can be achieved, how measurable impact can be achieved, because we're really about opening up new markets. And as we open up new markets, we open up more investment. And as we get more investment, we're going to get more impact. So I agree with everything you said, Tom. We just have to also think about where we get more active.
Yeah, I think it's collectively we picking the spots and not being forced to pick the spots, right?
That's right. That's right.
If I could just add one last comment, it's tangential to this, but I just want to give a special shout out to Sarah. Fantastic. So I just want to give you a little bit of feedback, because what we do at the Green Bank actually is national in nature, and it does cascade. And so sometimes we're a little Connecticut focused, but again, I'm giving a special shout out to Sarah. Why? Because she was a lead participant on the a lead really with DECD Deep, and then the CT Built team with Commissioner Boughton's team on the tax credits with CPAs with this flyer, where it really was. And I went to our team and said, can we snack size this for businesses? That was my feedback. But my point is, it's being adopted in other states. They want to take what the Green Bank did in partnership with Deep and DECD and model that in New York and in 3 other states. And so I think that's just one example, but I really do believe the more and more, and I'm talking New York now, and the semiconductor and quantum and these corridors, and the more I hear about it, energy is a big thing. And I'm telling you, Green Bank, in my conversations with semiconductors on quantum, they're talking about power, and they talk about the Green Bank. So I just want to also just give a special shout out to everybody here and thank you, because what we do here in Connecticut is actually being a national leader in affecting other states. So I just want to also just give a couple of moments. So thank you, Brian, and thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you for that comment. I just kind of building on it. The Inflation Reduction Act and all those tax credits is one of the largest opportunities to not only confront climate, but to support a huge, vibrant green economy, like a new economy, right? So, and there's things in that tax credit that are available to every state and community that could be very different, that could be very reinforcing to what they want to do, but can also be new opportunities. So, that little fact sheet, and we'll send them to the board.
They should see it.
They're super cool. And it comes from like all the agencies interacting with each other and saying, okay, these tax credits are important to us. Okay, so from a government perspective, we realize that these are important. How do we now translate that importance to the businesses and families so that they could take advantage of those tax credits? So what you'll see is, quick fact sheets on, have you gotten your energy efficiency home improvement tax credit? Have you gotten your vehicle tax credit? Have you gotten your whatever? And then those fact sheets actually run through CPAs, because the CPAs are doing the annual, your taxes. So we're trying to inform people in very unique ways. So that's how our interagencies are working, and Sarah working with the teams pulled all that together. But you could also imagine that we've got hydrogen tax credits, we've got manufacturing tax credits, we've got nuclear tax credits, carbon capture and sequestration tax credits. Like, any state can literally pick its spots. And to the extent there is an industry or public policies that can enable that tax credit to flow, it's only going to enable more investment. Bert and I were with Commissioner Boughton last week in DC for the NGA meeting.
Yes.
And Bert was fantastic. He was up there with the state of Ohio. So we had Connecticut and Ohio talking about how to enable private investment from banks like M&T Bank, Adrian, which was great, and Macquarie Infrastructure, for how public-private can work together to enable those tax credits to drive more investment. So I feel like we're just scratching the surface. We've got till 2033, really that money's on the table, but you have to seize it. It's not just going to come to you. You have to go after it. So we're very much in a race to the top kind of environment.
Right. Thank you.
Brian, I would just agree, Brian. Like, I remember years ago, there were federal tax funds allocated to Connecticut that would just go unused, and other states would then use them back in the early 2000s. And I think the job here is, to make sure we try to leave as little of those incentive funds unused as possible. And if anything, be the state that's then using the ones that aren't used by other states. It's, as you said, it's just opportunity for us to drive a deeper resiliency program, just like a private business, where we always say to them, take a holistic approach and make deeper changes and use, the ones that are cost effective. Same thing for the state. The more we can drive a deeper approach and spread it across all these municipalities, the better.
Others? All right.
Okay. So so is that other business?
I guess it is. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Or are we going to handle other business?
There you go. Well, if I can add, I've got another other business item. If I could, Madam Chair.
Yes.
All right. So some board members may have seen or heard or read, there was a Connecticut Inside Investigator article earlier this week. So I'm going to send over the weekend to board members just my synthesis of that article. The article involves a couple of things. One is the Solar Marketplace Assistance Program, which the board has heard over various years in terms of how we engage the state, municipalities, schools, in going forward affordable housing. So it speaks to the Solar Marketplace Assistance Program. Also, how we competitively procure projects, not only the EPC part of the contracts and competitively bidding it, but also financing in the context of states versus municipalities. So it really digs in to how we competitively bid or not financing. And then thirdly, the role of Inclusive Prosperity Capital. So, which is the nonprofit that we founded. We've talked about them over the course of several years now. But I will do a summary and invite board members to reach out to me if you have any questions, comments on it with respect to that article. Happy to just dig into it with you all, but just wanted to put that out there. I'll send it something over the weekend.
Yeah, and I should say also, it's a Yankee Institute publication. So I think it's, having been a former investigative reporter back in the day, I think it's really important to know the genesis of these things. So this is from the Yankee Institute. Any questions or issues anybody wants to address? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I motion.
Second.
Do I hear a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay. We're adjourned. Have a great,
Bye,
great
everybody.
weekend.
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thanks for a thorough debate on everything.
Green socks. Today's St. Patrick's Day.
No, it's Sunday. You're not ready?
That's right. Fiona sent the
Weekend.
yeah. Fiona on our team